Well, hello there YouTube and welcome to another portrait painting tutorial live edition. You may be noticing that we have a different setup. Well, this is a setup that you've seen me use in the past, but after a while, my wooden palette, I've just had too much trouble getting the color to work for everyone's say computer screens and stuff. So we're gonna stick with this for now. The reference is up there. The link is in the description box of the video if you want to paint from the same reference that I'm working from. This is a John Singer Sargent. We are well familiar with Mr. Sargent, and he is definitely one of our favorites, hopefully, when it comes to doing a master study. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and start to draw a little bit. Hey Ann, I'm working on a 8 by 10 inch linen panel that is stretched onto a wooden MDF board. So it is a linen. I toned it with oil paint, so we can kind of call it an oil toned linen. And there was a sale at Jerry's Artorama, so I bought a whole bunch of these, and this is going to be the size that I'm going to try to stick with for a while. So I'm trying to lock in the outside shape first. I'm thinking about placement more than anything though. Now this model kind of gives me a Dr. Neo Cortex kind of look. Dr. Neo Cortex kind of feel. We're going to work on this master study for a couple streams. So this is just the start. You may be noticing that my microphone sounds hopefully a little bit better. You are going to hear some of the air conditioning in the background because it is summertime right now. But hopefully you will be able to see a little more and hear a little more with this setup. Now we've got kind of a Wolverine look going on. I'm going for the eye socket. I'm thinking of the size of that forehead. Hey Michael Jones. Going for light and shadow of shapes now. And it starts off very abstract. I may end up having to move some stuff around depending on how I get everything to fit. The bulb of the nose. We got the wings of the nose. So the model is facing us, or was facing Sargent pretty much straight on, which is absolutely one of the most difficult views that you can have. Hey Ogen, Sky One. So this is now going to be the partner to my Forever palette. This will be the TV palette that you will see on your screens. It's just a 12 by 16 New Wave glass tabletop palette. I'm being a little too careful with the start of this, so I'm just going to move a little bit faster. When you have a front and center view of the model, always anticipate a challenge that's a little bit higher than, say, the challenge level of working with a model that's in a 3/4 or profile view. I'm just using raw umber, a size 2 filbert bristle brush. Going for shapes. And these are just my first initial guesstimations. And I like to start off very abstract. The more abstract you can visualize, the more real it becomes. Try as much as you can to stop thinking about this as a portrait of someone. Don't think about it as a human. Get that out of the way. Do not think about this as a portrait. Think about it as a still life or a landscape. Get the idea of likeness out of your mind in the beginning. And online students, feel free to send your images to the virtual classroom of this master study. Everyone has access to the photo reference. But of course, online students have the ability to send me images for the virtual classroom. So definitely this would be a good one to paint with. Now I just toned these panels not too long ago, less than a week ago, with Alkyd, Avid Black, and Titanium White. So there's a chance, like right now when I'm subtracting, I'm actually putting a little less pressure, that some of the tone may come off. So I'm being a little more cautious with that. Hey Libertas. Hey Karen. In general, you want to give your surfaces about a week to dry, or 2 weeks. Sargent always was a very stylish painter. Um, Everything he did seems flawless, seems effortless. But as I've said many times before, it takes a lot of effort to make something look effortless. And you can see with this one in particular, there's a lot of impasto on the forehead. So the forehead was kind of what drew me to this image. It looks like a lot of fun to paint. And hopefully you're enjoying having the palette right next to this. It's not my favorite way to paint. I don't recommend it. If you can have a palette on a tabletop, or a handheld palette would be even better. But I do this for you. I do this for you so that you can see the colors more clearly. Always watch out for that dark rectangle. I always go for a triangle. Never put a dark rectangle underneath of the nose. Even if you see it there, even if the lighting is like that. Always do that. Always go for a triangle. And even Sargent, I don't know if he thought of it like that, but I see that he did that too. Hey Janusz, thanks for watching from Portugal. Our model's got kind of like a biker look to him. Tough guy. Don't mess with me. I've got a beard. These are all terrible things to think about, but for some reason, that's what I'm thinking about. Looking at the angle that his ear makes. Again, I'm making mistakes in my thought process. I'm thinking of it as an ear. I should be thinking of it as shapes. But, I mean, there's the ideal, right? The ideal is don't think about it as a human, use big shapes and angles and things like that. But then there's real life. I like to use raw umber to draw because it leans really nicely towards skin tones when you start to add skin tones. It dries faster, so if I wanted to, I could spend the entire time just drawing with this and then adding the color in later. I have that option if I want to. I start pretty much every painting like an alla prima, but then I continue to work on it for weeks. Hi, Stephanie Thompson. Alright, now we're going to go and add some of the dark for the beard using a bigger brush. Thin out the paint a little bit. Thinking of the outside shape of the model's head. Now we're going to start to introduce some color. So this is Ultramarine Blue. It's going to take me some time to get used to this setup. If you're curious about what colors I'm using, I actually forgot to type them out, but if you look in the description box of the video, you'll see the list of the full color palette. And this is that minus, I think, 2 colors because of the space. And I'll just read it out to you. Burnt Sienna, Alizarin Crimson, Cadmium Red, this is more like a Cadmium Red Light. This is Orange, Molybdate, which is like a Cadmium Scarlet, Cadmium Orange, Indian Yellow, Yellow Ochre, Cadmium Yellow, which is Chrome Yellow, but it's basically like Cadmium Yellow, Lead Tin Yellow, Cadmium Green, Viridian, Cobalt Blue, Pthalo Turquoise, Ultramarine Blue, Dioxazine Purple. So essentially, I've got 3 reds, my Burnt Sienna, Alizarin, and Cadmium Red. I got 2 oranges, so 3 primaries for the red, 2 secondaries are the oranges, and then I got 4 yellows, 2 greens, which are secondaries, and then I've got 3 blues, which are primaries, and then I have 1 secondary violet, Dioxazine purple. So since this is the first layer, I am not using any extra medium, just to paint, and occasionally thinning it out with odorless mineral spirits. And I added Ultramarine Blue to this raw umber mix, which gives me a nice black color. I also added some other colors, but again, it's listed there for you. I'm going for these dark shapes with the idea of large shapes in mind. Sargent himself may have worked something similar to this. Academic painting is working general to specific. I doubt he started working with the eyelashes and stuff before getting to this stage. But who knows? So I have watched some of my old videos and live streams, and I'm just watching my own videos. I'm like, just paint already, just get to the point and paint. The last thing I want is to put you through 20 minutes worth of talking and a line, like 2 lines on the canvas. Like, what was the point of that? So that's why I'm painting a little bit more, just getting right to it. Hey Libby, thanks for watching. Let's add some lead tin yellow just for a little bit of flavor for the background. By flavor, I mean adding kind of a, maybe like a slight off greenish to the background. Depending on your computer screen, this is going to look different. Now obviously these colors are going to look very close because this is a gray panel, and this is a gray palette. A little bit of Viridian too. This is a Princeton Catalyst Polytip Bristle Egbert, size 6. Brush I've had for years. It does its thing. It's mostly a background brush. I'm going to leave a little space here for my pinky. Oh good, Stephanie, I'm glad you like this setup. I definitely miss my wooden palette. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of hurts a little bit not to use it. But this is just making things a lot easier for me and hopefully for everyone else. This is a little darker. Now that leans a little too violet, so Indian yellow. And we're gonna leave maybe like this spot here. Dark for the clothing. I ran out of Viridian. I'm gonna get some more. Viridian. So from Libby, never can get my skin tones right. Well, don't think about them as skin colors. Just think about them as colors in relation to one another. Skin tones are not always, but mostly some version of orange or pink with some gray, and that's for all ethnicities. Our skin tones, yes, we have different ethnicities and different local colors, but if you really look at it, the mixtures are almost the same. Almost exactly the same. Forget it. This is small enough that I can actually rest my pinky here. So let's just cover that. So we're kind of quickly creating an underpainting. Wet on wet. Now we need some Cobalt Blue. Remember that every palette is, or should be, part primaries, secondaries, tertiaries. Meaning a tertiary would be like a brown. That's what this raw umber is. Basically, it's a tertiary color. But for the most part, I have just primaries and secondaries because I like to mix my colors. My grays, usually, I like to mix. And don't look just for a simple solution like a palette that's like, it's so easy to mix skin tones. All I gotta do is mix 2 colors and add white and perfect skin tones every time, because every situation is different. And it should be different. Do not look for a simple formula. The simple life hacks to skin tones or whatever. It sounds great in theory, but every situation is different, and you learn that when you paint from life. Sargent knew that. Okay, so now on the topic of skin tones, we get to have a lot of fun with this forehead. That forehead is going to be joy, great joy to paint. So let's go ahead and let's just jump into it. I like to use lead white. Lead white has this ability of which I can use more of it without raising the value too much, which allows me to have more control in the mid-tone range. And that's where all this stuff happens. So you see here, I went right from burnt sienna to Viridian and white. And it pretty much gave me a skin tone. And now I'm just going to test it, and it's not going to look that different on the canvas anymore. It's the palette color is not going to look dramatically different because it's right next to the painting. It's got the same light, pretty much the same color. I'm adding some Cobalt Blue because the first little spot, always test it. Always do some testing, like testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Does the microphone work? You know, kind of things like that. This is still too pink, so I'm going and I'm thinking to myself, now you want to work for your colors, right? So look at this. I'm going from purple, Dioxazine purple, to cadmium yellow to give me like a warmish brown. You see that? And then I'm gonna mix into this. Well, thank you so much for the super chat, Stephanie Thompson. Thank you. You know what time it is now. It's time for the super chat. Grumpy Cat. Again, I hope I don't get in trouble with copyright because I am honoring and respecting Grumpy Cat, and you know, all that stuff. So super chat, Grumpy Cat says thank you so much, Stephanie Thompson, for your contribution to live painting sessions. So as always, super chat to Grumpy Cat is going to take a look at the painting and say, you know, this kind of has like a Johnny Depp look to it. This person looks like, you know, this looks like either Dr. Neo Cortex mixed with Johnny Depp or Wolverine. What's wrong with you, party? And then I'm going to look at Grumpy Cat. Grumpy Cat. Isn't it a little too early to be saying this face looks like something? Grumpy Cat says, I guess you're right. How many of you looked at the start of this painting and thought, this looks like so-and-so. That looks like my cousin Ralph. This looks like this person. This looks like that person. Grumpy Cat says, I guess a lot of people might be thinking that. And that's the challenge with portrait painting. Challenge of portrait painting is precisely that. There's something psychological here, especially when a person is looking right at you, smack dab in the face. That's the challenge. Stop thinking about this as a human and think about these shapes. And that's how you will improve your painting. Well, thanks, Paul. I'm glad you like this style of painting. Alright, so we broke free from the colors we had before, and let's add some cadmium green. Remember, these are primaries and secondaries. Pure colors. I'm not going in with an earth tone, even though burnt sienna is an earth tone. I'm really working for this mixture. That right there looks much closer. So if I adjust the camera, light sensitivity on the camera, then you see. Hey, Augustin, yep, shapes. There you go, shapes. And that's it. That's the color I was looking for. We went all around the color spectrum. We went from reds, yellows, greens, purple, back to yellow, all over the place. And now we've got the color we wanted. But the problem with, one of the biggest problems with color is if you don't abstract it, just like Augustin wrote, it's all shapes. He wrote shapes. If you don't abstract it, you start to look into it. If you start to look into it, then you paint more out of fear. And you should feel the color out. Now we're gonna have a plane change here for the glabella. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting it wrong at first. You might have the wrong value, the wrong color for a long time until you finally get the right shape. But at this point, I'm just preaching. I think at this point, you just want me to paint, I'm assuming. So if you have any questions, remember this is live. Feel free to ask. Good idea not to be stuck in one spot for so long. But also don't just go all haphazard either. Which Sargent might have actually done. He might have actually filled all of this with skin tone and then treated it like a wig maker's block, quote unquote. But it's a good idea to have, especially if you don't have too much experience. Don't jump around too much. The forehead is an excellent place to get the ball rolling, so to speak. Yep, yeah, just go for it. I really enjoy the feel of linen and the support of a wooden support. So this MDF and linen combination is excellent. And you can see the colors now really clear. Cobalt blue. This painting, you can really see the Velasquez influence on Sargent. Sargent himself would not have liked, I hate to speak for someone, but from what I've heard of him, I don't think he's someone that would have liked the notion of talent, and that it's something you either have or you don't. That's just all an excuse. Talent is an excuse. It's all hard work. And yes, there could be maybe like a small amount of talent involved, but very minimal. If you don't have the passion for something, even though you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have a drive to do it, you won't take it to a high level. But if you have the passion for it, if you have the motivation, if you have the love for something, you will take it to a high level. And that's what I see in Sargent. Hey, Paul. Paul has written to us. You also inspire me on your drawing, painting. I finished a painting of a ship with rough waves, 2 months working on it. I used watercolor paint and acrylic medium. Awesome. Excellent. Congratulations. Remember, if you want to share your artwork with us completely for free, just check out the link to the Facebook group that I created for the audience of these live painting sessions. The link is in the description. And of course, if anyone wants tutoring and guidance on their own individual artworks, please check out the online classes. That's a forehead. There's some muscle of the forehead. This is the roundness of the frontal eminence of the skull. This right here is the bridge of the skull. That's the superciliary arch that we're still developing. This is the kind of Sargent stuff that I like to see. I like to study. That's why I went and put a plane here right in the middle to paint into. Hey, Augustin, did Sargent use the same color palette as yours, or did he use the Zorn? So there's some references online about what colors he used, but from what we know, he did have more of a limited palette with skin tones. However, his palette does have some violet in it. It does have cobalt blue, vermilion, which is somewhere in between these colors. So he didn't use this exact palette, but I'm sure some colors are in there. Lead white, I know that he had that. Burnt sienna, I'm pretty sure he had that. I heard that he had cobalt blue. Vermilion is something in between here. He must have had alizarin crimson because that's a very vital color for portraiture. Ultramarine blue is a staple in pretty much all palettes. I'm sure he had that. I don't know if Viridian was a thing yet back then. He might have used like a chromium green. Chroma. Color has three components. Hue, value, chroma. The closer you are to the highlight, the planes that are facing the light more are going to have more chroma. The reference right there looks rather cold, the forehead, so I'm painting this warmer, but I will add more of those cold elements to it. Yep, no problem. Augustin. Alright, let's start to move around. I'm going to have a light brush and a dark brush. This is my dark brush. Do not think about details. Think about structure. Don't think about finishing a painting. Think about enjoying the process. Don't stress yourself over the finish. Now remember, skin tones are some kind of strange in the middle between pink and orange for all ethnicities. Different lighting scenarios will give you different skin complexions. For example, my skin tone is like this, right? But if you shine a bright orangey neon light on me, I'm gonna look different. Skin tones are also, not just skin tones, color is relative. You cannot look at a color in isolation and say that you got the right color for a painting. You need to relate colors to one another. For example, this forehead may have looked too orange at first until I added more stuff on the face, and then it starts to look cooler by comparison. It's the same problem I had with my palette. My wooden palette was a different color, so the color that you would see on the wooden palette looked different than what you would see on the camera. So I'm thinking a lot about vermilion. I don't have it. I don't have the true vermilion, but I'm thinking a lot about it, and I can see its presence in the Sargent painting. But with modern colors, you can approximate it to a very close degree. I'm trying very hard to avoid one of my tendencies, which is to just jump right into the eye and start to develop it. Because what happens is I'll develop an eye, and then I'll find it's too small, it's too, it's in the wrong spot. Who knows? All kinds of things can happen. So I'm trying my best to only put in enough information to suggest that the eye socket is there. I'm working around it. But also know that every situation is different. You may have a setup on your painting where it just makes more sense to just go to town on the eye. Always know that every situation is going to be different. Now I'm looking at the space between the eyes. It's much more narrow. See, if I focused all of my attention on the eyeball, I may have missed this shape in between the eyes. A tendency is something when you're painting, it feels good to do because you rely on it. And you can have positive tendencies in painting. Those are good habits that you can build. Now the nose has more of that vermilion color. Vermilion, for those of you that are not, who don't know about it, vermilion is mercuric sulfide. It's a pigment made from mercury, which is one of the reasons why it was replaced with cadmium red. And now cadmium has been replaced. And there's some more, let's see, healthy alternatives available that can be similar to something like a cadmium red. See Winsor Newton colors. They have cadmium red replacement. Pyrrole red is a replacement for a cadmium red. And in fact, this is not even cadmium red. I fooled you when I called it cadmium red light. It is Winsor red. I'm not using it for safety reasons. I'm using it because I ran out of cadmium red. And I don't want to go and buy more cadmium red if I have something that'll work in its place until I use it up, then I'll get more cadmium red. Hey, Angela. Online students, remember that this is going to be the first Thursday of the month, which means for all levels in my online classes, you are welcome to join me in the live chat through Zoom. That is this Thursday at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now his nose is not as wide as I've painted it. I'm aware of that, so these are just little placements. I like to have the lead white, or just white in general, in between the yellows. In between the yellows, because it's like in the center of the color spectrum. If you combine all the visible wavelengths of color together, you'll get white. So again, this is like a color wheel. In the middle we have white. Gotta give credit to Mr. Isaac Newton for that discovery. And it is taking me a little while to get used to this palette, but the layout is not different from what I use on my studio palette. The layout is the same, it's a color wheel. Really don't have to think that much about where a color is. If I feel like it needs to become more blue, then I know where to reach relative to the other colors. Angela, yeah, he's kind of staring at me. He's giving me this look. He's like, better not mess me up. That's kind of a psychological thing too, when a model is facing you. So we got a question from Bushido. Question or comment: hey, if you ever realize that an edge isn't hard enough, but it's in a spot you have already painted, how do you make an edge sharper without making a stroke that flattens the area next to the edge? That is a very specific question. I have to think about that. Okay. I would thin the paint out a little more and use more paint, mix up more paint, and then add like a drop of like mineral spirits or some medium to thin out your paint. And then you will be able to have a sharper edge without manipulating the areas around it too much. So that's a paint handling question. Very good question, very specific. I like that. I'm being a little too cautious around his eyes, and I knew that. I knew that that was going to be one of my tendencies, so I'm trying to push myself away from the eyes. Now I use Alizarin Permanent in place of Alizarin Crimson. Sometimes I'll use Alizarin Crimson interchangeably with Alizarin Permanent. Now you're seeing a phenomenon happen here where the surface is absorbing the color. When I thinned out the dark here, it is absorbing a little bit faster, and that's something that linens will do, which is not a bad thing. It's just something to take into account. Notice how I go cross-complementary a lot. All across the color wheel. Cross-complementary mixtures will give you nice neutrals. Red, green, yellow, purple, blue, orange. And again, orange and blue. I have different oranges and different blues. One thing I probably won't use is Pthalo Turquoise. I could, if I want to have a really rich dark, but I don't need it at the moment. Let's see how I'm going for the darks. This is me pushing myself away from the eyes. Fighting a tendency. Not all tendencies are bad, there are good habits, but at this stage, hyper-focusing on the eyes and ignoring all the stuff around is not a good tactic to take. Hey Bushra. Oh, I'm glad that that helps. This is your first time catching a live one. Oh, awesome. I'm glad that you enjoyed the pre-recorded videos. I do plan on making more of them, especially now that I discovered this setup, different microphone. I've learned some new camera stuff that I can apply. So I'm very happy to hear that you like my videos. And of course, welcome to the live stream. Just two brushes right now, light brush, dark brush. I'm using almost all the colors minus Indian Yellow and Pthalo Turquoise. I'm not using those that much. Indian Yellow is nice for glazing. And remember, I told you Pthalo Turquoise is excellent for establishing really vivid dark colors. It's also brilliant for landscape. What you do to one side, it's helpful to do to the other. Now I'm going to move to the other side. There's absolutely nothing wrong with slowing down. At this point, I've been painting for, I don't know, 52 minutes, like under an hour. And this is a lot for under an hour. Some of you may be faster. Some of you may take more time. This is about the same pace that I'll paint on my own. I have become more comfortable with painting on camera over the years. In the past, it used to really mess with me. I'm much more comfortable with it now. That didn't come naturally to me. That's an experience thing. But this is fast. This is a faster pace than some may be comfortable with. I know some of my students are way faster than me. They can get a painting done in the time it takes me to get through the first stage. But in my classes, we've got different levels. My classes are great for all levels. Again, I'm trying to avoid the eye, but I do need a plane underneath. Hey, Augustin. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Hopefully, if you're free Thursday at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we can meet on Zoom. And the closer I get to the nasal bone, the maxilla, the more I start to think about vermilion. And I keep telling myself one day I'm gonna buy the genuine vermilion, just to say I've used it once. Now with brush strokes in this direction, it's going to create a glare for me. That's when I'll use this fan brush. I'm using raw umber more of a filler. It's filling some of the dark colors. It's not really changing much. I'm not using it in a traditional sense to mix with it. It's more like a medium almost. The shape of his chin is very minimal. I don't see much for it. Clearly, there's more for his chin than that, but this is just how I'm putting in the planes. I do recommend you use a palette larger than this. But again, this works well for my purposes here, purely for demonstrational reasons. Not sure I can read your name. I don't know how to read those symbols, but thank you. Alright, now I'll use the Pthalo Turquoise, and I'll show you why. So see how bright it is down there? So Pthalo Turquoise, Alizarin Crimson, and a touch of Viridian will give you a super, reminds me of the anime One Piece, it'll give you a super dark, but very chromatic. In theory, I should have 3 brushes out, but I'm just gonna keep it at just 2. I'm also thinking, how do I want this to dry, or how do I want this to be for the next time I work on it? What can I do now that will make things easier for me later? And it would be much easier for me to work on this if I get all of the big shapes in position first. Hey Jennifer, why stay away from the eyes at this point? Good question. And the reason is that the eyes, psychologically, once you really start to put in the eyes, it makes the awkward stage much, much stronger. That's one psychological reason to stay away from the eyes. A more practical reason to stay away from the eyes is that you want to work with the big picture before the minutia. It's just easier on a technical level to answer the question of forehead, side plane of the nose, cheekbones, the mask of the face, the large structures, and then get yourself ready to put the eyes in there. Sargent would say that the eyes are like spots on an apple. You have to paint in the structure of the apple before you put the spots of the apple. Augustin, no sable brushes at this point, just bristles. They're just size 2 filbert bristle brush, silver brush Grand Prix. My favorite brushes to use. But use what you're comfortable with. There are no brands paying me to sell something to you, so use what you're comfortable with. I'm pushing some more neutral greenish hues on the side of the face to help to pull the warmth forward a little bit. I also kind of see it. So one of my favorite Sargent quotes, "Every time I paint a portrait, I lose a friend," is one of his quotes. And it's kind of funny. I wonder what his relationship was with this character. It looks very serious. And remember, there is no general formula for how to paint a portrait, how to paint anything really. There are systems that you can use to guide you. So for example, when I teach, I use some systems. Do this, do that, step 1, step 2, step 3, then you can get this effect and stuff like that. And that's useful for learning, but when you're actually painting, when you're trying to make something look realistic. Hey Janet, it's a good idea to keep, say, these systems in the back of your mind, but use whatever technique you need to get the job done. So Janet, I'll be doing the live chat this Thursday for the first Thursday of the month, in case you're free. Thursday, 12 o'clock p.m. our time, since you're also in Maryland. Yep, 12 p.m. Awesome. remember, I'm thinking of shapes, and I'm keeping this very abstract. I'm absolutely not pressuring myself for likeness right now. Not even thinking that this is a human. And when I paint from life, it's the same thing. Although these days I'm relegated to only self-portraits, but I would do the same. I'm also trying to work all around the face because I feel like it's very appropriate for the Sargent, the Sargent-y type aesthetic. I'm not trying to mimic him or claim to be using the same approach that he did, and I mean it. I'm probably going to see a comment at some point in the future. That's not how Sargent painted. I know. I know that's not how Sargent painted. This is a portrait painting tutorial live. I never once said, hey, I'm going to paint this how Sargent would have painted it. But I do think of how he would have approached it. A Disillusionment, a cool name. Oh, awesome. I'm glad that my videos helped you paint your self-portrait. ASG. So for example, around the chin, when there's facial hair present, it's usually a classical convention to push the greens, the blues, the grays. So that's what we're kind of seeing down here with the original, of course. Hey, Janet. Yeah, go for it. Project 2 would be a good one for more of a realistic approach. ASG, when do you choose to paint with bristle brush and when do you use softer brushes? Good question. Alright, so bristle brushes are great for carrying a lot of paint, and if they are like a higher quality bristle brush, they can carry a lot of paint and still have a soft touch, especially when you clean them with like artist soap, like the Masters soap. It's called the Masters soap. I use it to clean my bristles. I use these bristle brushes, in general, bristle brushes. I use them when I'm planing out. That's when I like to use the bristles. Softer brushes like Sables and Well, I only use bristles and sables anyway, but I switched to softer sables like these when I am describing. So not just planing, but actually going in there and putting in the details for the eyes, the nostrils, maybe some hairs over there. Um, Whenever a very soft touch is required, that's when I'll switch to the sables. I'm very basic though. I stick with either bristle or sable, unless we're talking about my background brush, which is the Princeton Catalyst Polytip Bristle. And I pretty much just use that for backgrounds. Let's see. From Jennifer, what color are you using that looks red? Third from the top right. Third from the top right. That looks red. Well, I'm thinking top left. This one is supposed to be cadmium red light, but it is Windsor red. Um, if you mean like up here, this is a mix of like everything, with mostly, I guess, these because it's more red. But burnt sienna, alizarin permanent, um, Windsor red, which is in place for cadmium red light, orange molybdate, which is in place for cadmium scarlet, and then yeah, those are the reddish colors. So I'm going cadmium scarlet, the cadmium scarlety color, which is orange molybdate, and cadmium orange. I mean green, sorry, cadmium green. Yep, no problem, Jennifer. Viridian is a must-have for almost any palette. It's a really nice blue-green. And again, cross-complementary mixtures. Emmanuel, you read my mind. You wrote, you're curious what you're going to do with the mustache and the colors that I will use. I'm actually working around the mustache so I can get some color on it. Every plane change is indicated by a value change. Some planes can be in the same position relative to the light, yet have different values. That is if they have different local values, like the mustache. Let's see, so Angela, if a person has a tattoo, would you wait for the skin color to dry before painting the tattoo? Yes, definitely. I have broke that rule before, but it's easier to let the skin tone dry. It's actually easier to just finish the painting, then add the tattoos. So from SG, As written to us, when I use bristle brushes over wet paint, I either blend the two colors or remove the paint underneath. I use rosemary brushes. I'm not sure. I don't really have that problem with silver, but I don't think that. I'm not saying that silver is better than rosemary, but I think it could be the application of the paint. So, for example, like right here, I'm okay with it pushing some of the paint or blending it. I'm okay with that, and I anticipate it that it's going to do that. So sometimes that's the effect that we want. But if you're feeling like the bristle is subtracting too much, then that's perfectly fine. You can totally switch to a Sable or a synthetic. Yep, no problem, Angela. Alright, so I've worked all around the facial hair. So now what are we going to do with it? The facial hair looks cooler and darker. So we're going to start with that. I'm going with Cobalt Blue, mixing some more over here. This is why I suggest you have a larger palette. But I'm using this right now for the sake of demonstration. And I'm going to go in with a darker color than I think I'll need, and then I'm going to add light to it. So you've got to be cautious with how you use your color. There's green in it, but it's not like the Grinch stole Christmas green. So this will have like a limited palette look. It'll look like I used a limited palette, but I went all around the color wheel to get these colors. Okay, now let's just go with skin tone. Emmanuel, yeah, it does have a touch of green. But remember, colors exist in isolation um, in theory, but in practice, you have to look at colors in relation to one another. It looks green relative to the surrounding skin tones, but if it was in a different setting, that color would maybe look red relative to something else. And it's that very Sargent-y kind of thing to put a big dark shape underneath of the nose. Angela, bristle brushes get old and need replacement. I usually, when a bristle brush dies on me, it's usually because it's lost all its hair. But they don't usually go bad on me though, while they still have their hair. So let's get some of the skin tone. Do some things here. These colors need to work in relation to one another, and so do the values, and at the same time, the planes. So everything is about relationships. Kind of like life. Alright, so now we can throw a Sable into the mix, because right here I need some very specific stuff for the bulb of the nose. So we're throwing in a Sable for a very soft touch. ASG, so you've written to us. You think it's the consistency, thickness of the paint that causes some issues in your case. You're struggling to find the right consistency. And that's a possibility too, because if you use more paint, it's going to be a little easier to push things around. But if you're only painting with small amounts of paint on your brush at a time, it can be harder to manipulate smaller amounts of paint. So going back to Sargent, a Sargent quote, the thicker you paint, the more it flows. Now I'm not going to bother with the wings for the nose that much. I can suggest them. But that's kind of some stuff that I want to let future me take care of. Because if I have a pretty decent understructure, it will be much easier for me to put the smaller stuff in on top of that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting it wrong. If you make a mistake, don't let it think don't let it think. Don't let it make you think that you're a bad painter. Good painters make bad mistakes. Great painters make terrible mistakes. But painters are at the skill level that they are based upon what they do with their mistakes. Mistakes are nothing more than stepping stones. It's up to you to figure out what you're going to do with that stepping stone. Are you going to let it crush you, or are you going to let it elevate you? Always remember that green, like cadmium green, has a bit of yellow in it. So though it looks really cold, it's actually kind of warm relative to other colors. And remember, next time we will go in with smaller shapes. I do plan on doing some more pre-recorded videos, just FYI. Some more pre-recorded videos so that I'm not working on the same painting for like a month at a time, like a Head and Shoulders. And now you're seeing, now that I've got most of the surface area for the face covered, some spots of gray are actually left to show there. And that just shows you how useful it is to have a gray tone. For portraiture, when you're painting something that's more warm, have a cooler tone underneath. If you're painting something that's more cold, have a warm tone underneath. The contrast helps, and the value helps too. Having a neutral value and a cooler color for the background helps with painting skin tones. So if you're struggling with skin tones, ask yourself, what is the tone that you're working on? What's the tone of your canvas or your panel? Filbert is my self-portrait done? The one I was working on last time? Definitely not done. It's one of my studio paintings, and I take a long time with studio paintings. A long time. But thank you for having an interest in it. I will, maybe I'll stream it again in the future, or for sure you will see it, the finished result on my Instagram whenever I finish it. But I mean, I've got maybe like, I got maybe like 6 or 7 paintings in progress. Sometimes I'll put a painting aside for months before returning to it. Alright, so we will go a little crazy here. I'm going to add straight white on here and mix into the painting. And this will give me some nice texture. My lead white tends to dry overnight. If not, sometimes it takes about 2 days. So it'll be dry pretty quickly. And it's actually easier for your first layer to be lighter in general. Lead white is also a tad bit warmer than titanium white, so it also lends itself better for skin tones. But you can use titanium white all the same. And that should be about good. We are past the 9 p.m. point. Let's see. I'm going to stand back. I know the feeling, Libertas. It takes me a while also to finish a painting. But these, of course, these are going to be like on a schedule. So these paintings um, for us here on YouTube, these are going to be done at a much more reasonable speed. Like I said, I'm going to throw in some pre-recorded videos now. So these are going to go by a little bit faster. And of course, one of the goals is you will actually have a chance to own these studies as well. I'm going to do a mix of master studies, portraits that are not master studies, still life, landscape, combination of all that stuff. So that should be good here. Hey, Didi. Let's see. Oh, cool. Yeah, don't worry about your username there. It's okay. Oh, good. I'm glad that you love this. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. So this is the start. Remember that this is not, you know, like the everything. If I cover the features, you see that we've got most of what you see there, minus the features. So all we've got to do is start to add more and more smaller structures in here, and that's what we're going to focus on next time. So hopefully you enjoyed this. This will be the time that I'll hang out for a couple minutes and see if there are any last minute questions. And uh, while I'm waiting to see if there's any last minute questions, I will rotate the canvas or the canvas panel a little bit. So you see the painting with the least amount of distortion. Although I did have the camera set up pretty close to front and center, so not too much distraction or distortion, should I say. Hey, Leonie. Oh, thank you. Thanks for watching. Oh, thanks, Augustin. Thanks for watching, SG. Thanks, Angela. How stiff are the brushes that I use? Not that stiff, but they're also not very, they're not that new either. I tend to put my brushes in a plastic bag and put them in the freezer until I use them the next time. But I do clean them like once every couple days. Just because I paint a lot, it's kind of a hassle to clean the brushes after every use. So they're a little stiffer than they would be if I cleaned them every day. But they're not very stiff. I'd say like medium. Yep, no problem. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any last minute questions. So thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you like my content here on YouTube, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'm a little bit close to 100,000 subscribers, which would be really, really awesome if I could reach that number one day. So if you're watching and you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I usually don't ask you to do that, but given that I'm very close to 100,000, if you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. That would be really, really awesome. And if you want to take your online art education with me further, please check out the online classes on patreon.com/upariartist, also listed as the pinned comment in the comment section of this video and typed out for you in the description box of this video. Remember, the online classes start at just $10 a month, and of course the best part is you get direct feedback from me on your ongoing artworks, and of course class projects as well. Thanks, Gregory. Alright, so thank you all so much for watching. I wish you the very best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.